This is episode 54 of our talk, and today I have a special guest of who I am really excited that she is here with me today. So let me introduce you to Karen van Hoey Smith. Sounds so Dutch. She is an art director, mentor, and educator. And I had the privilege to meet her at a networking event in London, the Other Art Fair, and attended one of her strategy sessions with the VAA, the Visual Artists Association, where she is the mentor. She loves art. She says she can live on it. She is passionate about antiques, antiquities, history, the psychology of collecting, and that's what makes other people passionate. Welcome, Karen. I'm so happy to have you as my guest. Do I pronounce your name all right, Karen or
Karen,
Karen?
yes. We're Karen, yes.
Ah,
Like,
great.
there's a few of us in the world. Lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me onto this. I've been really excited listening to your previous podcast, and to be invited has been a pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So you definitely love art, and I've been involved in the art, and you have been involved in the art and antiques business since 1997. Yeah, and you have quite a list of accomplishments when it comes to art. What made you go into valuing art rather than making it yourself?
I think that's all down to teachers and confidence.
Mm.
People who kind of make those decisions for you, tell you that's not good enough, or you compare yourself to other people. And I've always had the ideas, but felt because I couldn't do what everyone thought was art, which was drawing, representing something perfectly, like photographic quality. I thought that was what art was. Maybe that's part of the Dutch as well, with with the background that we come from. But it was definitely at school. If you couldn't replicate exactly how that apple was, then you weren't an artist. So I think that really knocked my confidence. Also, I don't know, my brain works in a certain way. I'm very good at remembering when something's happened, what price something's gone for. I'm very quick at analyzing something. So I can look at a painting and not just see a painting, I will go through every part of the painting, work out if they're, for example, the old Dutch interior scenes we used to see when we were younger. But I would look at the rug. How was the rug supposed to be at that date? Where is it from? Is it from Turkey? Is it from Persia, etc.? Was the furniture made out of mahogany? Was it made out of oak? I could just analyze every single part of that to work out, is that exactly the date? If it is exactly the date, what has been the current market valuation of that going over for the past 20 years? And then assess how much it is today. And I just found that bit to be quite easy and less judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
because if it's an auction, it's an estimate. If you get it within the estimate, that's brilliant. If it sometimes goes higher or lower, that could be because you've got it wrong, or it could be because somebody's just got a lot of money at that time, or somebody is fighting against somebody else and they really want to have it. Whilst when you draw that apple and it doesn't look like an apple and you're told it's not an apple, then that's very personal. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Absolutely. And it's amazing that you can just remember those details and those things. And yes, the Dutch art is the old masters. I'm trained that way.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly painting what? Like a photo. That is that extreme realism. No, it's capturing, and Rembrandt was so good at it, capturing the emotion and capturing the psychology, or even like Frans Hals, more frivolous with his brushstrokes, etc. So, but
Yeah.
it is interesting, and people are very judgmental when it comes to that, especially teachers. I've heard this story throughout all the episodes I did multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the Dutch painting, I was saying I like also like the little messages they used to put in them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Love finding the little secret messages. Why is that put there? What are they trying to put to? They're putting this with this person to make that person have a higher status than the other person. This person is clearly more important, and I love all those little messages and
Yeah.
things like that.
Uh, even, and I did this one, the Dogen, they paint this portrait like in half. One half is the friendly man, the other one is, you better listen to me. I'm the ruler. And that is that psychology within a portrait really intrigues me.
Yeah, I wonder if many
So
people notice that, or whether it's just you notice it straight away, or sometimes when you know something, you see it quicker. Does that make sense?
that absolutely makes sense. Yeah. But you can see it. And we all have a different side, by the way. So, yeah. But as art mentor, you clearly make a difference in people's artists' lives. And how important is it for you to help artists from beginner to professionals to make their way into the art world?
Incredibly important. I think a lot of it's not necessarily always helping them into the art world. It's helping look at their artwork from a fresh perspective and then showing different places it could be. Because most people, as I said, you're told, right, if you do an art, well, if you make it being an artist, because so many people don't make it. And this is what they're often told. And when you've left university, well, only about 1 on 5 of you are even going to be artists. I think, oh no. And so then people kind of come out and they think the only way to be an artist is to really get into a gallery or get picked up by
Mm.
someone.
Mhm.
And but then you think there are so many different types of galleries. There are so many different types of public galleries. There are so many different types of art you can do. And I think you just need someone who can look at it and say, I think yours would work really well here, or I think this would just fit better. Have you considered this? And that's at all levels. You know, I do work
Yeah.
with people who are completely and utterly beginner. They've always created, but they're at the beginning of an art career, as in they want to take this to another level, to get collectors, to sell artwork, and to let art pay for itself. But also to people of really quite high end, you know, who are working with public exhibitions, who are working, you know, selling to top collectors. Everyone just sometimes needs to have a chat with someone who can just see a better place it
Yeah.
might be,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
really dig deep into that person and find out what would really make them excited. What is the thing they
Mhm.
always dreamed about? Because there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with being a local artist. I think there was a whole thing in the 90s about people going, you should move on, you shouldn't stay where you belong, you should go and see the world. Local was kind of bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can have a brilliant career. And how great is it to be going around your area knowing loads of these houses have got my artwork? All these children coming out, they've woken up in the morning, they've run downstairs and they've gone past something I've done.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
could be
And make them
inspiring.
happy. Yeah.
It
So
can be
important.
inspiring a
Yeah.
new generation of kids, not necessarily to be
Mm.
artists, but to look at color, to get
Yeah.
excited by things, to have judgment. Is that good or bad? Why is it? Why not? You know, lots of different things. And to know that maybe the local newspaper has your artworks going to be in it, or you've got local exhibitions, or slightly wider into county or areas. I think that's a brilliant thing to have.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I agree.
it
Yeah.
was put down, and it's a very sustainable career.
Yeah. And that is the beauty of what you say and tell people, and what the VAA also brings out. Because, and you said it, I think, in one of the last master classes, don't fall for these programs that tell you you make 6 figures in 30 days, because it's nonsense.
Yeah,
And
it
you
is
see it
in any,
more and more and more. Yeah.
yeah. And what it is in any job, if you hear that, you're always told, you know, if it sounds like easy, it's probably going to be a bit of a scam, isn't it? But
Hmm.
they're making the money because they're selling you the courses.
Exactly.
And then someone else is copying it.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, fair play if someone does like that in a month, that'd be great. But yeah, no, it's difficult. I think we need to help people to help themselves really.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
give people a bit of a path. And like I say, the VAA for me and what we do is more like you're on a marathon, but you haven't realized you're on a marathon, right? Because when you're creating, you're doing with Play-Doh and you're on plasticine, you're doing this, you know, you're creating. And then suddenly one day you're like, oh, I'm gonna have an art thing, but I've got all this art, and people panic. I think all we do is we stop you and go, right, have you got the right shoes on? Are your laces tied up? Let's make sure you got the right things in that backpack. Here's a map. Okay, let's work out which route you want to take. Now, it's going to be a marathon, but there are refreshment stops. Okay, you can pace it. Some of it's going to be sprinting and some of it's going to be long. But now you know you're on that marathon.
Yeah.
You know which way you're going. You've got the tools in your backpack and you've got the right kit on.
It
And
makes so much sense. And I think it's so needed. And that is so special, because what makes the VAA so special in comparison with a lot of other of these associations or all these ways of trying to tell people or tell artists, okay, do this, then you will become that. Do this, then you will come. VAA is something special. I mean, I found it and I felt like, I could pull my hair out that I didn't find this earlier, because something opened there for me. You're not aware, right? A lot
Yeah.
of the times. So what makes it so special for you to be there? And
It's having that guiding hand that isn't, I mean, the VA and I, one of our first conversations was how frustrated we are that universities don't give the practical advice. Even something like how to get yourself tax numbers, how to do basic accounting, how to even know what different careers and things are there. Because just because people think an artist are the people at the very top. Okay, it's a bit like saying you can't be a footballer because you don't play for Real Madrid or you don't play for Liverpool. If you play for a town, or you play for Bristol City or Bristol Rovers or one of these or Oxford City, still an incredibly good and high level that you're playing at. You're still in the leagues, but there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's what that assumption for universities is: you're either going to be that or nothing. What they don't say is people have different motivations for their art. They might really like painting a certain thing, and someone will go, well, that's not very highbrow. You're just painting, pictures of Marilyn Monroe over and over again. Yeah, but you know what? Some people really like to have pictures of
yeah,
Marilyn.
absolutely.
Not
Yeah.
saying anything of
Yeah.
that. You're painting someone who was an iconic legend. You're painting someone who was a piece of art herself in the cinema, and she was treated almost like a sculpture.
Yeah.
And you're all kind of doing this in different ways. That's got a part of your personality, your viewpoint. Every single thing that an artist creates is going to have that filter of how they have seen the world. Every experience they've had, everything they see goes through into their head. But most people, it goes through those filters of how you view it into your head, and that's it. You guys have got a paint factory at the back or a creation factory, and somehow managed to translate all of those things you've seen, all of those life experiences, positive and negative, bring them out and then come out with a representation of it.
Yeah.
They can be joyful or whatever. But it's phenomenal that can happen. Why does that's come out? Why does it have to be something that has to be gold and gilded and put in a cage? Why can't everyone like it? Why can't I go and work with a publishing house? Why can't I go and be a book illustrator? Why can't I just go and work locally? What there are all these different options. And why aren't you told these different options? And why aren't you told the practicality of how to start it up, how to photograph your art,
Yeah.
how to hang your art, how to describe your art, how to approach people with a letter or a conversation? This is all stuff that would be incredibly useful to know.
Incredibly useful. And this is what the VAA makes so special, also to me as an artist. And God, I was reading that book, Good Art Doesn't Sell Itself, and I'm looking forward to the next edition. And I had like, crikey, yeah, I've done this, I've done what? I can do this? Okay. This, what? A journalist? Me? All these things. And, it's also because on an academy, they don't even teach you anything about how to sell your art, how to come out there. And I had a conversation when I did my MA art history with a museum library, head of library. And he asked me, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm growing my art business. Business? So yeah, I'm an art entrepreneur. We all are. He said, you should know how many people still send us emails every single day, hoping the museum can buy their art.
Yeah.
We don't even have room enough to store the art we already have.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so important that people of all levels know where they are, because I really believe for everyone there is a space.
Yeah.
Somehow. Yeah. And your work there specifically, what do you teach artists, or how you mentor? You are the mentor of the VAA. What is it that you mentor when they come into your program?
I think I'm probably doing it a bit wrong. I think I'm supposed to do it in a different way. I think I'm supposed to, as a mentor, go, hey, what do you want to do? Let's write some ideas and I'll guide you a bit left and right. I get really involved. I do quite a deep dive with people because I find it fascinating. We send people a questionnaire first. That's really good. It makes you panic because it makes you write down what artwork you've got, what you've sold, where you think you are now, all this kind of stuff, what qualifications or courses you've done. But I often find that people will write what they think they should write or what they think they should do.
Yeah.
So I love seeing that. Sometimes people are just blatantly, brutally honest, and they do know where they want to go. On the whole, I think people just want to follow a path that they think they should, and they don't know.
Yeah.
So I tend to, sometimes it can be a bit of counseling session, but I would just, because I can see really quickly, I don't know why, it frustrates me when I see artwork of children and teachers can't read it. Frustrates me. It is
But
so
that is really a problem we have nowadays. Yeah. And children also wanting to draw realistically when they have the age 8, and then there's no teacher who can teach them. Yeah, I can teach them, special program, but it is annoying that
But kids are really honest with how they play and what they
Yeah.
draw, and they will often draw what problems are happening
Yeah.
in their life. They'll
Yeah.
often demonstrate. You can see through art and doodles what that person's going through.
Yeah.
And I wish more people knew that, because I find it so easy to see that, and I just don't get that people don't. So when I'm talking to a lot of people, I can often, through their art and their conversation, work out when they've had a sense of rejection, where sometimes that trauma side, or where that negative side has come from, where that block is, or why they think that. And whilst we don't need to discuss that, because that's obviously quite personal, but I can kind of tell pretty quickly that is. And then when we do that, we would discuss and work out what the plan is, go down to the root, find out what it is they really want. Or if they already know that, then it's just a case of showing them how to get there. And so I don't really teach and say, you need to do this, we need to do this. This is like, let's work out where B is. It's always good to know where A is. Let's work out where B is. In simple terms, you can reverse engineer that. Don't rely on every single step, because in life, sometimes you try something and it fails. And as a life as an artist, it's not necessarily fail, it's that first attempt in learning. It's not a fail, it's just something to learn from. But the more steps you have in place, if one of those doesn't work, then you're not going to plunge because you've got another one or an alternative. So it is about putting those gentle steps in to help you get where you want to get. Now, if something feels totally unrealistic, you go, it's good to dream, because it doesn't mean life is about the journey. It's the route from A to B. It's not getting to B. If you want to get to B, you just need to be going towards B. A lot of people will go, do you know what? It was great. I had this passion of being in Tate Modern. But actually, what I've done is I don't want to be in Tate Modern. I do want to create the artwork that I think should be in there, or I want to be in there, or I think should be represented. And I want to do it at the quality of that. So I've done things to a better quality. I've done things that I know people who would visit that place. I know people who support that. I know some of the trustees now, but I don't necessarily think I want my work in there, or their collections acquisitions policy at the moment is not going to work with what I do, because the funding has changed quite dramatically at the moment, and a good job really. Museums and galleries are trying to fill in the gaps in their collection. So say, for example, I think Tate Modern, I went there, 96% of the studies of nudes were of women, but only created
by men.
26% were created by women. So do you think that balancing? I mean, obviously, as is Tate Modern though, if I was talking V&A, I'd go, well, you kind of understand, because to start with, in the academies, it was very few women. So they're gradually catching up, but now most of them have a completely different acquisitions policy, and they need to address that. So maybe you're not going to get in the Tate anyway, just through timing. But aim in that direction and put those steps in. So that's kind of what I teach or guide or help people. And then we've got all the other information from experts that, I learn every day still. Do you?
Yeah, of course.
Something new every day. You don't just go somewhere and stop learning.
No, but that's the point. You need an open mind.
Yeah.
You need that open mind. And I mean, I'm here all ears, and I have like, okay, absorb, absorb, absorb. And that is what I had since I entered the VAA, because you're looking here, looking there, looking. So this is so important, and it is good to know, and it's good to see. And I love what you do. I had a mentoring session with you, a strategy session. Yeah. And it's so much, but it's like,
Yeah, well, I think sometimes it's a lot, but just take the bits you need, because through one of those sessions, which by the way, kind of show you that long overview of the things that need to be done.
yeah,
Every person's going to get a different thing out of that. Because the penny drops at some point during that hour for everyone. A penny goes,
oh,
and then they go, oh, my head's exploding because Corin's been talking to me for a whole hour. But there's always one thing you'll take away.
yep.
That's just that gap, or that, oh, wow, I just thought I was going to do this. I could do that. I've talked to artists before and that have worked on kind of art that would be on your wall. But the way it's created this kind of kinetic art, we've had conversations and we decided to explore and see how big we could get this. And honestly, his work, we're trying to get it into like airports or into hospitals, places that can be public art, large scale, changing the way that people interact within their environment.
Yeah.
And at first he was like, no, I want to go back to selling things on the wall. And I'm like, you don't have to go this far, but if you know how far there is to go, you just bring back from your travels and put that passion or that sense of engagement into that smaller piece. But it's good to know what it could be, or envisage it.
Yeah.
And could it do something? And if legitimately you think, do you know what? I don't think I'd want to do that. I don't think I know how to do that, or want to try that. I actually don't think it'd be that good for public engagement, or I think cars would probably crash if they saw that, but at least you've explored it. And when you come back with all that knowledge to that small thing, you look at things in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Is this high quality? I love my artwork. I think I've done a brilliant job. You go off and explore in your mind and you come back and go, yeah, I need to improve that a bit. Or I need to.
That is the journey. And it is so beautiful. I mean, I have here in this little room, I have my art around me, working on pieces and finished, just varnished. And then I sit here and I look around and I go, wow, okay. I love that. I love it. I see a piece here and I'm like, oh, okay, now I see it. That was just a little bit off. It is this beautiful journey you do.
Yeah.
But it makes so much sense when you go with them, and because you see and feel where they come from. And that is, I think, the most important thing. Why do you do what you do? We have this deep-seated why we do what we do, right?
I think it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. In fact, I'm doing a whole big project myself, personal project on it, because I just find it absolutely fascinating. That I call it Mark and Spark. There are two little things, and this is the whole reason. Do you know the reason why I got onto this journey? It was I was on a school trip to the Centre Pompidou in Paris, and being a slightly petulant 15-year-old, I think I was looking at some black and white etchings, which at the time were not interesting me. And there were a lot of them, a lot. So I walked off and I just thought I'll have a little nose around. And I went around this pillar and there was a sculpture in front of me and it physically stopped me in my tracks. I felt it in my chest and it was like the wind was taken out of me and I started crying. I didn't know who the sculptor was. I didn't know why. Why did I have that reaction? It was Constantine Brancusi's Bird into Space. And if you think of it, it's an incredibly modernist sculpture, which, as a Dutch family, I grew up, with carpets on tables. I grew up with an appreciation maybe for some loose things. I grew up with a lot of silver and pewter. I didn't grow up with really contemporary sculptures. What was it that made that happen? How did that artist somehow manage to communicate? And it's got hardly any lines in it. that's what I've been chasing that whole time. But also, what was it that made that artist want to do that? You know, you don't see this in other animal kingdoms so much. You know, you might see people picking things up, actually purposely alloying metals to create a sculpture, which they then have to heat to thousands of degrees, to then let it cool, to then varnish it and like burnish it and do all of this. What makes us do that is fascinating. Because I guarantee first person in cave going around their hand with pigment wasn't thinking, this will make my cave more worth more money. Oh, you know,
No, of course not. Of
what
course
was
not. But that
we
is the whole thing, right?
we
It
want to
is.
not only tell the stories,
Yeah,
but we want to visually depict them to show people.
exactly.
It's
Exactly.
fascinating. Maybe a lot of people didn't have good hearing. Maybe they had big tigers roaring in their ears and they needed pictures. I don't know, but it's fascinating that we have that feeling inside us that we need to create. All children want to create. All children want to put their hands in mud. They all want to play with crayons if they don't have them, or they'll scratch stones against things and make marks. There's that intrinsic thing that we do. And what I admire about artists is they keep going. And
Yeah.
let's face it, it's
Yeah.
one of those careers in the world, probably the only one that you get constantly told you're not good enough, constantly told when you're going to get a proper job. I don't think you should do that. Why don't
Oh
you keep
God.
a hobby? You can come back to it when you're retired. Oh, isn't that lovely? But it's not a real job, is it? If you're battling against someone constantly telling you, I mean, you wouldn't say to a dentist, a kid that likes that, and go, no, you really shouldn't be a dentist. I don't, please don't. You're looking in people's mouths all day. You should definitely be an artist. No, he does that. Nobody tells the kid to not be an architect, to not be an engineer, to not be a scientist. You know, there's doctors. Everyone says it's great to you. Everyone wants to be a doctor. I don't like the smell of hospitals particularly. I don't think I'd want to be a doctor. But you don't tell them you shouldn't do that. You should definitely just be an artist instead. I find it fascinating.
It is. It is very fascinating. And let me tell
Amazing
you,
you guys keep going.
the art, what art does to our health
Yeah.
is incredible.
Mm.
So ruling it out as useless is the biggest mistake ever made. And I'm currently reading a book, Your Brain on Art. You have no clue what your brain is doing on art, but it is massive. I can tell you. It's so healing.
Yeah.
And I do not create art to heal. I create art to empower women, to address social issues, etc. But
Yeah.
to make people happy when they have it in their rooms. But it is the aesthetic experience that what you had with that Brancusi, that you stop and you feel it in your chest. That's what art does. And that's why art is
still put it
important.
now. 30 years on, I still feel it when I remember it. I can still tell you exactly. And interestingly, for someone who's quite creative, I have aphantasia, so I can't see anything in my mind. If I close my mind, I can't see any images.
Mm-hmm.
Strange. It's like there's a black curtain there. But with my eyes open, I can absolutely 100% describe what it looked like, how it felt, the whole situation. Because my memory works through all the other senses, randomly more than visually. But I'm a very visual, creative person. I can still feel that exact moment, where it hurt, how I felt, how embarrassed I was crying. Just going, well, that's a bit pathetic. But for something like that, 30 years to have made such an impact. And this, you often hear this story about people. Even I was in hospital, I was visiting someone and I was looking at this and I had that sense of calm, relaxation, or sense of hope, or, I was just looking at something and it made me laugh, made me really angry. They're just the simple feelings. And then you've got the tonality of it, you've got the depth. All of that is doing something. Looking left and right, you're using your delta waves, you're using different brain waves when you're looking at art. How close you are to it, how far away you are from it. It's amazing what it actually really does.
What it does is
when people just
absolutely
go, it's just a picture on the wall. It's just like, it is a picture on the wall. You always know, I say to people, it's not just a picture on a wall, because if you take that picture down, the first time you put one up and then you've taken it down, so you're going to paint or you're moving, it just feels wrong without it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. I need my own paintings around me too, and the paintings I have from others, if I have them. And
your paintings like Are they friends to you, your paintings? When you look around, do you feel that sense of, I've got my friends around me, or like a close
Something
one?
like that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm currently painting a series of musicians and I'm painting a Dutch violinist. But when she's playing, so I don't capture them from a photo in the sense of I do this differently. And I hear her music. I hear it.
Mm. You know, that's really interesting. There's a lot of artists I've worked with that they see music. In fact,
Yeah, I
Kandinsky,
see colors. Yeah.
I was reading, like reading for like I was into about 3 o'clock in the morning reading Kandinsky's 1912
Mm-hmm.
theory about spirituality and art. His
Mm-hmm.
manifest, it's brilliant. But he does a lot about seeing color. So I wondered if he was
Yep.
synesthetic to start
Yep.
with,
Yep.
synesthesia,
Yep.
or whether that's how a lot of artists see. Because he was like, I when I hear something, I see the colors of it, and when I feel
Not
something,
everyone has that, no. But
no,
I can tell you that sometimes I have this synergy in smell and seeing
yeah,
and colors and hearing, but also when I talk with people for commission or I create an art book and I let them tell their story,
yeah.
I start to see the colors that I need to use.
Ah, that's interesting. There's another artist, Kirsten Todd, who for my daughter, I commission a portrait of her every 5 years. Is my plan, rather than getting all the school photos. So the
Mm-hmm.
recent one was also by an artist who did that. So when she kind of taps into the energy of the person, that's when the color palette comes out for it.
Yep.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I wonder.
It
We
is.
need to do a study to find out how many artists might be on that synesthetic level, or how many people do that, just as a poll or something. Find out how many of you see color or hear color.
Yeah. Yeah, it is
I find it,
interesting. Yeah.
I find it fascinating. When I lived in Japan for years and had this beautiful garden, and I thought to myself, I think I'd read somewhere that people are, yeah, Flight of the Bumblebee, the composer, where it came. And I thought, do you know what? I've never really tried to hear music or see that in nature at all. So I did this little experiment with myself. I'd always not properly meditate, but sit there and just try and listen. And it didn't come for a while, but then when it did, oh my, and I'm not musical. It was like suddenly something was switched on. I could hear like the ding, 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 ding of the rain, and then it started to have different things were coming up. I was like, wow, I wonder if that's how composers do. Now then I went, oh my God, I can do it. So then it went away because you've got to be in that state. But having that small moment, I thought, wow, that's how the world must be if you if colors are music, if things are music. And maybe that's how the composers are. Maybe that's how some of the greatest composers in the world were walking around with just this orchestra.
Yeah, you have a French composer who did this on specifically bird sounds. He
Yeah.
was walking with his book, and yeah,
Yeah. It was a
it
phenomenal.
is.
It was a phenomenal experience. I let myself get into such a state of relaxation that it happened, and then obviously got really excited, so it went. But it was such a poignant moment. And I thought maybe that's, artists are walking around seeing this with color, or they're having conversations on the phone and they're seeing colors,
Yeah,
or designs or depth, or, it doesn't have to be that. It's molding, things. Maybe they're making shapes. Maybe they're just sitting there and before you know it, they've got a bit of blue tack and they're like, oh, that'd make a great sculpture.
yeah. Or what I had is I talk with my portraits, and so I did a project, Black Queer Role Models, Painting for Unity, and I painted Marsha P. Johnson. Now he or she had a very rough. She was murdered, and it was never solved. So I found a black and white photo, and I had like, okay, I'm going to paint this. And she didn't want to be painted. I felt that resistance, and I started talking with her, really talking. And suddenly, as if something, and I did it. I made the
Wow.
painting. That is a weird thing. And people always say, yeah, you
No,
must be
but
crazy. But it happens, and I can't help it.
no, this I find it fascinating. I mean, I'm curating at the moment an exhibition about the word spirituality and art. So this is what I was reading about Kandinsky, because I think spirituality, one, it's got a really bad rap. People seem to think it's been hijacked, the world,
Mm,
the word.
yeah,
But
yeah,
also too, maybe we just use that word for that unexplained part of us that we still can't work out that comes from something. Am I talking to people? Am I opening myself up to energy? Can I actually tell that little circle, that ball inside you that makes you create this, that does this? Maybe that is just what spirituality is, because we don't have a better word for it. What can we say what it is? And this is what we're exploring. I mean, I'm supposed to be writing a manifesto this weekend for it, but it's not really a manifesto, because I've decided that instead of telling people what we're doing, it's asking people what they feel. So what do we know? So, you know, this is what we need to ask people questions rather than tell people all the time. We need to let people discover themselves. You know, don't be put off just by a word like, I'm an artist. No. Don't just stop at that and think, oh God, they're flaky. I bet they don't pay their bills on time. No. Why don't you let go of that and find out who I really am, what I do? That your judgment of, as I went back to the beginning of, doesn't look like an apple. Does that really matter? Can you feel that painting? Can you see it? Does it represent somebody you want to be represented? Does it emote to you? You know, is there some sense of that painting that just makes you want to stop and look at it for a while and be like, wow, where am I going? Do those colors make me feel something? I think we need to stop and just question a lot more.
And that's so true, because that's what, when we were on the other art fair, everyone was walking with a phone. And you see people taking pictures of art, also pictures of themselves with art. And I didn't take any picture. I absorbed.
No, I didn't. I was supposed to.
I absorbed everything. And I had this with, that was the last episode I had with Jenny Merck. I walked there and it was so busy and so chaotic. And her booth was so silent and so calm. And I saw this picture, it is a print. And I stopped and it really touched me. I had like, wow.
Yeah.
Because we need to see instead of, and with our own eyes and not through the iPhone.
I think we've also got to learn that skill. Like I remember a beautiful sunset that I remember being at the time that I didn't feel that I needed to tell someone about it, or I didn't need to capture a photo. And it was such a good experience of just sitting there and thinking, that's my sunset, that. And it is, because I could look at it, I could enjoy the heat, I was admiring the size of the sun, I remember the waves, the feeling of the sand, and I just sat there and I felt really relaxed. And because I was present and I was looking at that, when you've got a phone with you, and don't remember, I understand some people, it's actually a barrier, it's a tool. I'm feeling anxious in this thing. If I've got my phone, then I don't need to be present because I don't know what's going on.
I think that's the biggest problem.
Feeding information through that lens. Not everyone needs to know that. Why don't you just sit and enjoy it?
Yeah, exactly.
For a nice time. You know, ask the artist if they wouldn't mind sending you a picture. They're going to send you if you take a photo and you don't get the quality of what that artist has done, you're doing them a disservice. Say to them, I love your picture. Look, I really can't afford to buy any art. I'm not in a position. Do you have a JPEG? I'm not going to copy it. Or do you have a low res info? I'd just like to be in touch and have a look at it in a better way. Can I have a card to look at your website? Can I come and see you another time? Will you be at another fair? Or do you have open studios? Because I'd really like to come and see this again, rather than just taking a picture that you're just going to whack on Instagram just to show people that you're around art.
And it doesn't do any good also, or even Instagram. And when you take pictures that are pretty well, the energy that comes from an artwork is so much higher than from a photo. So that's why you stop and really like, wow.
completely and utterly.
Because that's what, but simultaneously I can look at art in a museum and I feel the negativity or the blackness within.
It should always make you feel, the worst thing anyone can ever do is go, meh. I want to hear, I love that, or I hate that. What is that? My child could do better than that. You know, I want to hear that expression. Because if you're expressing, it means you've made someone feel. I don't want someone if it's got to be the worst thing ever if people walk past and just go, meh. Because no, it's done nothing.
Yeah.
I want you to hate it or love it or not understand it or want to know more or just want to run away from it. I
Yeah.
just want you to feel in some way.
Yeah.
And I find that something I have walked past pieces before that it could be. I make a point of trying to go back again in case it was just my mood, because sometimes it can be your mood. You're just not in a good mood that day, or you're not going to be
Yeah. And then
receptive.
go back and you can revisit it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if it's really powerful, it's going to stop you anyway. And
Yeah.
you remember those really, really powerful moments. You never forget those really
No.
powerful.
No.
I
No.
remember once. This is the testament to how well Thomas Lawrence paints. He was only he was from Bristol originally, went to devisers, used to just do sketches, but by 15 he was a court painter. 15. So there's that element of this, but there must be that stroke of genius. I was looking at a painting that he did, and it was of this young gentleman back in the 18th century. I blushed.
Mm-hmm.
Actually made me blush because I thought he was looking at me.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But I was like, no,
Yeah.
that's a sense of reality to the
Yeah.
point that it's actually giving me a physical reaction. And it's
Yeah.
really hard. You can't make yourself blush. If you try and make
No.
yourself
Yeah.
blush, it's really hard.
Yeah.
But it made me blush. I was like, how? And I remember sitting there going, how strange is that? That's a painting. Yes, it looks like a person. And if I put my camera up, it would recognize them as a person. But that took it a step more. That took it to an actual feeling of life.
Yeah. And
And
that is the art. That is art. That is
that
what
was,
art can
yeah,
do. And it is what you put in it as an artist. And that needs focus. It needs skill, draftsmanship, craftsmanship, but it also needs that specific intention and focus to get the story across.
I think that's the
Because
key.
we all tell
Intention.
stories, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you can tell stories through fruit, by the way. I love still lives. I love, I mean, it must be, but I love still lives. Everyone says still lives. I think you should say still life because it is
Still
still.
life. Yeah.
So, and people always say memento mori, they remember, but they forget that the first part of that was memento vivere,
Yeah.
that you remember life
Yeah.
through looking at death, but we
Yeah.
just remember the side of that death thing. But
Yeah.
you can tell a story if you said the key word intention.
Yeah.
If you put that intent when you create, that is, that is that spirituality. That is that thing that we're trying to discover what it is. That magic is intent. And when you do that and you put that energy from yourself and everything into it, that's what makes the difference between that looks like something and that feels like something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you're super enthusiastic. So what is your thrill when you mentor artists? What is that specifically for you when you do that?
Oh, absolutely. Every single part of it. It's the best thing to do ever. It can be exhausting, do not get me wrong, because I put everything in. I love every part of it. I love it when someone just, that penny drops. I love it when someone wants to go away and try something new. I love it when someone feels that they've got a bit more confidence. Every part of it is brilliant. It really is. It's lovely getting, and don't get me wrong, some people are just going to want a different style. Some people really are already there and they want tick lists. On the whole, the people that I work with, people that just want to explore that more, they want, and they love the passion, enthusiasm I have. And I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
passion. I get
Yeah.
passion, enthusiasm off everybody's artwork. But I remember I worked in the auction houses for years, valuing. And there were certain things which I didn't like. I don't really like, well, I don't value anything that goes tick tock or should do. Not a fan of clocks. They just remind me of an old lady that we used to know that I kept thinking that she would die when the clock didn't go tock because it go tick tock. But I thought, you can't be biased on this. You can't just not want to do them. You've got to connect somehow with this card. So I would make a point of trying to talk to the clock collectors or the train collectors or the barometer collectors, because the minute you're talking to them, you see that spark. When that spark goes, that subject for me, I'm like, it's that psychology. It's that psychology of collecting, that psychology of creating. The minute I see that spark, it doesn't matter what the subject matter is. It's somebody has that connection to it. And that is the passion.
Yeah.
This happens to be because of art. I think I've just always been around art, which is ironic because I don't think that was actually my favorite thing. I love ceramics. I'm a complete ceramics geek. all antique ceramics, love ceramics. But then with the painting, I don't know, I've just been around it, and you can just see where people are trying to go with it. And when they talk passionately, and I don't know, I'm going around in circles, but that's what it is. I get excited by all of it. I love seeing it. I love seeing people feel connected. I love seeing people going back to their art and realizing it can do something, or not.
Or not. Yeah.
And I love that. I love that connection.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And then quickly go into the psychology of collecting, because that is a very interesting one. I'm always interested in what that is. And up until now, personally, I had done only commissions. So it ticks when people get their painting, their portrait, and you see the tears coming. That's completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
But now when they start collecting, what is that specifically, do you think, makes them tick?
This is the reason I went into contemporary art, because I worked on the secondary market. So we got the 3 Ds in auction: death, debt, and divorce. And that's why most things come through auction. It is. So it's death, debt, and divorce. But also I was there and I see this stuff, but I would see the person who'd owned it or not, or a bit of their family and their connection. It's really tricky in an auction house, because all 3 of those are really quite sensitive areas. But then I'd have this and I'd never be able to talk to the actual artist. And I'd never be able to talk to that first collector, because it was always coming through. It was hundreds of years old, or, I didn't know that. So I wanted to go purely to find out what the psychology of why do people collect art and why do people create it. And that's why I went to go and work in contemporary art, because I wanted to find that out. And it's a mixture between our education, because we were always told, art collectors are these people, aren't they? Churches and the state and, aristocracy. I think I did part of my thesis on the mid-19th century, when Henry Cole and Prince Albert opened up the museums for free. And the whole idea is somehow the poor masses would osmosed taste, because the aristocracy have taste. We know what to collect. We go on the brand. We have it intrinsically in our blood. This blue blood is art collecting blood. But somehow, if we let all the poor people go through it, they'll somehow osmose this and it'll be brilliant. All that happened is they went through and went, oh, quite like that. Let me go make a cheap version out of ceramics and put it on my mantelpiece. But that was good, because that's what they took out of it. That's their artwork. That's when people started to realize they could perhaps start to collect things. They could collect cheaper things. They didn't need to collect this and that. But then we're often told still, like, people are quiet when they go into a museum and an art gallery. Why? Because we're not confident about what we're saying. We think other people know more about art, that we don't know anything, that we're going to be ridiculed. That's why I love with the contemporary is almost educating people that they can become a collector, that they can support. And that actually still has with it all of those years of education, of that sense that you are this high. So actually it makes collectors feel great. One, they've done something, I love this. 2, they're like, this is my art collection. It feels good. It feels like I'm at a different level, because we've always been told that. It's not necessarily, but it is in a way, because you're supporting a purely creative art. I might say I can live on art, but you can't really eat it. You can't sleep under it. It's quite unnecessary, but it is so necessary. And I love the fact that people can become collectors, that they can build relationships with artists or relationships with galleries, because people don't always have the relationship with the artist. They have the relationship with the gallery. And I love that kind of idea, that psychology of collecting, how we can change that to you can become a collector. Just because you're not collecting the ones that are in those museums, but you never know. Grayson Perry, someone I remember listening to the Wreath lectures, which were amazing in 2015. And I think there was an after speaker, an after questions, and someone said, why don't you make your pots more affordable? And he said, they used to be. You should have bought them when they were 20 quid.
Yeah.
Just because they're millions now. But I love that fact there are people could be, and they don't know whether it'll be the next best thing. Will it be a financial investment? Ooh, that'd be exciting. All the people that bought the Banksy prints for £70, 150, now they're worth 28 grand, 75 grand, hundreds. And they were a print. They bought them because they liked them.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that in my master thesis. I did Amsterdam Museum of Modern Art. A collector, director, Edi de Wilde, and he, I remember that I opened archive piece and it said like, okay, the young Americans would come, pop art, etc. And they would have an exhibition in the museum. And he wrote to them and the gallery owner, don't say anything yet before I have been there to purchase what I like for the museum. Otherwise, as soon as the word is out, price goes up.
Brilliant.
So he was very good at making sure. I think he built one of the best collections from that period.
Yeah, it's interesting because is it curated taste by that person? Because it's still somebody else's choice. And because you elevate it in status, you automatically saying that's better than something else. I find it really curious of like what we get to. I think there's a lot more option now because it wasn't the case of just here's the one museum, it's the British Museum, and we have everything from every other country. Now it's like there are so many different choices of places you can go. You know, here's this Whitechapel Art Gallery, here's this one, here's a little one, here's a selling gallery, here's a massive institution. You can get over much quicker. You know, I've been on the same day to museums in London that end up in a Prado in Madrid on the same day. Or now you can look at the collections online and you can experience them through video and 3D. So it's a lot more open.
It is, absolutely.
Choose what we like.
Yeah. When it was told that he built a really good collection, and I'm always wary about that because of what you say, it's his choice. But I visited to test this other museum like Tate Modern was not big yet at that time when he was there. And museum in Amsterdam was huge, very internationally well known.
Yeah.
We went to Vienna and we saw work of the artist that he purchased before they came into the museum. And then you can say, yeah, he definitely made the best choice.
It's brilliant when you get people like that, and it's the story they do it, and it's as long as when they're collecting contemporary art, it is a reflection of that time.
Yeah,
which is great. And I mean, this is what's going slightly off subject. This is what I'm saying to artists. Like, a lot of people are going, well, I don't want to show any pictures of me. My art should speak for itself. And I go, I totally get that. But when you look back at artists, right, the photos that you want to see the pictures of them in their studio with that smock. I want to read the letters that Gainsborough was signing off with, with the ones that, you know, I want to read the ones that Ruskin tore up because he was so devastated about his friend making sexual references. I want to see what Modigliani was scratching on napkins to try and get fed. I want to see the pictures of, you know, Picasso climbing up the ladder to paint Guernica because it really puts it into context. I want to go back to the days, you know, when I'm looking at the 18th century artwork here in the 17th century, going to the records office or finding the inventories and, you know, how did they describe it? Was it this? What was the communication? Was it about price? Was it about feeling? You know, I want to have those, look at that stuff behind the scenes. That's what is so exciting. And like,
it is very,
you to have that story of quickly, let me get there first because of this. That's fascinating. And I love that kind of stuff. That really, I mean, this is what, you know, really just gets you going of, that's why I like to try and document that through current contemporary artists, get them to leave that sense of provenance, because provenance, for people like me, provenance is key.
Yeah.
Because when you've got no sense of who did what, of the artist, you can't meet the artist, it was 300 years ago, you can't meet the original buyer, all the stories that have come through the family you can't trust for provenance because families like to change the stories. Having some of that primary evidence of that communication,
but also having yourself in a picture with your art. I think it's very important for artists to do that, to make that for yourself.
Yeah, and even if you're a bit shy, you want to be a bit mysterious, but document in some way, because there's going to be a geek like me and you in the future that are writing a thesis that will put you in our footnotes. I mean, that's all I ever wanted in life. People said, do you want to be rich and famous and all this? I said, no, I want to be a footnote. I want to be a footnote of some other person later on who's found and discovered me and put me as a footnote on their thesis. I'll be like, job's done.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. So I read your personal note and interest, by the way, about housing solutions, homelessness, as well as social injustice, which speaks to me. I do that too. I have projects that I do around that in art. But how can art and artists help make a difference? Do you think there is something we can do?
Yeah, always has been. I think it is really important for artists. And when I say artists as well, artists, poets, writers, anyone actually.
Yeah, I
But
mean
you
everyone.
need to,
Yeah.
yeah, you need to. Social injustice is, you should always look after people that need help to be looked after. I do believe in equality. If some people go, no, you don't need this. I think one thing I learned in life, right? I used to always imagine things were like a castle, and these castle were the big people, you know, the people you wanted to be or you wanted to impress. So you try and walk up to the door and you try and be like them, but they don't let you in. So then you kind of try again in a different disguise and they just won't let you in. So then you think, I'm going to sneak in. Then you get angry and you start throwing things at this castle. Then you try and get through a trap door. And then you realize, do you know what? Why don't I just build a tent outside it? Then you get a few more people and they just put a tent. Before you know it, you've made a little hamlet, a little village. Before you know that, that's just spread. All these people are having that sense of equalness. Then the people in the big high towers come out and say, please, can we give you some money? No, we've got our own currency now. We don't need that.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's about really highlighting. Other times it's about empowering the people in the tents, which is probably what you do is with your work is I want to empower equality rather than attack inequality. Sometimes you attack inequality to help that. And it's those two sides, and art can be very good at that. It can be the empowerment sense. We're all together. This is great. Let me demonstrate you. Let's do this. Let's get that feeling. Let's show you what's going on in the world by this sculpture that disappears in water. So you physically see it. Or do we go after those companies, after those people? Do we show? Do we demonstrate? Do we do posters? Do we do art projects, theatre, dance about those people? And I think that's where art's really good at, is getting in and supporting either the village that in the end you don't need the money or the shelter from those people because you're just taking over their land and they can't even get out because you're like, we're bigger than you. Or do you take those down?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't believe at resistance. So I take my art for some projects like Black Queer Role Models. It's an educational 11 portraits with poems written together, collaboration. We share our stories, survivors domestic abuse, which is extremely important. But it is I like to tackle it from the way of awareness.
Yeah,
that's great awareness. Like teach, because there's so much that people don't know or don't understand at all. They have no clue.
no.
So
I mean, when people say, well, art can't make a difference, you got to go, it's really interesting with the stop oil people. Do you know when they threw soup and they glued themselves to paintings? Why paintings? They didn't glue themselves to buildings. They didn't glue themselves to cars. They didn't glue themselves to design. They glued themselves to art. Art has always been that thing which does speak messages, that it does have a sense of importance and it does attract attention. But I find it fascinating that no one can really answer why didn't they? There's things of equal value, but it didn't glue
I
themselves.
think they did this to show that that is what I heard one of those people say, because there's so many people who pay millions for art, like the Reynolds that is going to the National Gallery for 54 million. And they say, instead of putting that in art, because that doesn't mean anything, put it in the climate. But there's a big mistake they make. And we talked about that before.
But they've
Art
increased the
is
value of
important.
the art by doing that anyway.
So, yeah, it's like the Banksy who was shredding itself, which was fabulous, by the way. But
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so what do I put against that? I'm not going to shout against them because I don't believe in that resistance. What I do is I start a project giving back and I paint trees. So you can tell me, okay, paint me an oak because I love an oak. And then you pay me £97 and half of it goes to a foundation that replants forests.
Yeah.
Instead of, so work with the arts instead of against the arts.
Well, art usually gives forward. That's why investing in artists is quite good. Very rarely, apart from these, you want to make 6 figures in the end of the month. Most artists, when they have got money or they're doing something, usually give back. They're usually doing some kind of workshops or talking to people or assisting people. Very few artists, it stops. They take the money and they don't care.
Mm.
I've yet to meet many artists that wouldn't give back to anything, and that kind of cycle of life.
Yeah. So again, it tells us to complete the sentence or the question that artists definitely can help in in those social injustice situations, and they do already.
It can also help in the other way. Also, can be a tool the other way. Propaganda. I'm a big fan of propaganda. Like, not big fan, but I'm a huge interest in the power of propaganda through art. And and this can be, and I'm not just talking like Russian Revolution type thing or China or things and stuff now. I mean, back in the days, it's all propaganda,
Yeah.
Napoleon on his horse.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting both ways. And I think when I see how that propaganda can inflate certain people and how it can put them at a certain status, you then realize that it can be flipped the other way around, so it can help other people. And it's very interesting how art can help and to describe, but it can also inflate and deceive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just the knowledge of it, and the way you read it, and the more conversations we have, the more people understand that. But it does have both ways as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much for this very lovely
thank
talk.
you. Sorry, I hope my voice is a bit good. I've been, as people say, I'm quite passionate, I get very enthusiastic and sometimes go off a little bit off tangent. So do apologize anyone who's listening if I went from this side to firmly across the other side of the room.
It was a lovely talk, and I thank you so much for it. Can people find you somewhere online? Twitter, Instagram?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, which is at kvhs_creative, or Karen, which is spelled like Karen, annoyingly, Van Hoey Smith on LinkedIn. Drop me something on LinkedIn, or come and see, just join VAA, and you'll see me all the time.
Yep. I put all the links in the show notes for sure.
Okay, brilliant. And thank you so much, Karen. It's been an absolute pleasure to have a chat to you.
Thank you, because, oh yeah, I've learned a lot again.
Yeah,
and it's always amazing with these interviews, you learn so much.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's the best way of learning, actually.
It is.
Is talking. I did going off round, but I shoot catapult for a hobby, slingshots. But I was interviewing people when I first, and I didn't know much about it, but I was interviewing people, and every time I learned more about that, I could then take it to the next interview, which meant that I learned more about it. So I not only learned more about catapult, but all the people and all the terminology. And I just felt every person I was interviewing, I was learning so much more. And it is a really good way through conversation to learn more about yourself, about artists. And this is why the VAA is good, because you get to meet other artists. When we're at the other art fair, it's just, here's a person. We say networking, which sounds very businessy. It's just talking to somebody
talk with people.
Fact, instead of having to go through all the small talk. Right, we're here, but we like art. We're talking about art. Let's start talking about art.
Exactly.
Not getting to that. And that, and so it's a good way to meet people, learn a lot about yourself, learn about other people, and muddle along together.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.